Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of The Fall of Icarus. This will be Part 13, Chapter 13, entitled Icarus's Mother. Dusk fell over the quiet campus as Shota walked towards Nezu's office after stopping by the 1A dorms and thoroughly reprimanding the students that had been fighting. He had messaged Shota as soon as he'd left the HPSC headquarters about an impromptu meeting, and he knew it'd be about his meeting with Midoriya, maybe about Hawks becoming a teacher as well. Shota sighed as he reached the door to Nezu's office and walked inside, not bothering to knock given that the principal was expecting him. "How did your meeting go, Aizawa?" the principal greeted. Shota waved him off and sat down in one of the chairs in front of his desk, reaching for the coffee Nezu had prepared for him. "The kid is suffering." "Oh?" Nezu asked, clasping his paws together as he leaned forward. "How do you mean?" "It seems that the vestiges are the only people making sure that he doesn't lose his mind," Shota confessed. "I'd honestly forgotten about them, so I was worried when he started arguing with himself until he reminded me of their existence." Nezu chuckled. "I can imagine that would definitely be strange to watch." He also correctly assumed that we, along with Hisashi and Kayama, are on his side. He even knew that Hisashi and I are married, Shota added. Nezu hummed, clicking his fingers on the desk. "He's very smart." Shota nodded. "He also requested that I don't expel any of the students that are starting fights. He's claiming that they were placed in a trap and have more to learn about such things to prevent this from happening again." "So, he doesn't blame them?" Nezu inquired. "I didn't say that," Shota countered. "Before he was taken away, there was a new spark in him. I'm sure that if the commission hadn't taken him in, he would have found a way to prove to the students that he wasn't the traitor after all, even if it meant revealing the true nature of his quirk." "If anything, I can't wait to get him back and see how he puts the other students in their places," Nezu said with a gleam in his eye. "Nezu," Shota warned. "Midoriya will need time to recover from whatever treatment he's enduring by the commission's hands." "Of course," Nezu agreed. "But he will eventually need to return to classes, and I already have an exercise planned out with Hawks for when he does so." "Does Hawks even have a teaching license, or are we about to put another hero on the roster just because they're highly ranked?" Shota asked, glad for the subject change. Nezu clicked his tongue. "No, Hawks has been taking teaching courses throughout the time that Midoriya's been gone, and he will continue taking them while he's teaching. I'll be his teaching aide and mentor until he has a full license." Shota nodded. "I guess I shouldn't fear his lessons, then." "Indeed," Nezu agreed. "We will not have any more of Yagi's mistakes tainting your class or Vlad's." Shota nodded, just as a knock sounded on the door. "Come in," Nezu called out, not seeming surprised at the interruption, though he probably saw whoever it was coming from a mile away. Hitoshi pushed open the door as Katsuki tapped his foot on the ground. After Aizawa had reprimanded them all, they'd gone back up to his room, and something had crossed his mind, and now it wouldn't leave. "What do you need, problem children?" Aizawa asked, waving them inside. "You're not getting out of your suspensions, even if you didn't initiate the fight." "That's fine," Hitoshi shrugged, even though he was pissed off about the suspension that barred them from participating in the heroics course. "Katsuki realized that he hasn't heard from Mrs. Midoriya, and we wanted to know if any of you have contacted her about everything." Aizawa looked at Nezu, who simply blinked. "I must confess that I haven't," the principal replied. The group finally went inside the office, and Mei shut the door. "What about you, Sensei?" Shoto asked. Aizawa shrugged. "I thought someone else would." "So no one's talked to Auntie," Katsuki snapped. "Does she even know that he was arrested?" "It simply didn't cross my mind," Nezu admitted. "I assumed that the commission would, as this was their doing, and we've been busy trying to get Midoriya out of their clutches." "Does anyone know if they contacted her?" Hitoshi asked, tilting his head at Nezu. "I currently am not sure," Nezu said, tone turning sympathetic, though they weren't sure who the sympathy was for. "I will look into it." "No need," Katsuki snapped. He was tired of all this information gathering and waiting. It was time that he got out there and got some information himself. That's what being a hero was. I'll go talk to her myself. It's Friday anyways, and the hag wants me to bring these extras over for dinner. I thought we got past you calling us extras, May sighed. Besides the point, Katsuki snapped, irritated at the situation and himself for slipping. We can all spend the weekend at my house, and we'll go visit Auntie when we're there. I only live like a block away from their house. I guess that is a fair enough plan of action, Nezu nodded. Please do tell me if this is the first she is hearing of the situation. Yeah, Katsuki said. We'll tell you as soon as we have any information, Shoto responded in a more reassuring tone. Thank you, children, Nezu nodded. Now why don't you go pack for your weekend trip? I wouldn't want you out traveling too late by yourselves. Make sure to send me a text when you get there, Aizawa huffed. I don't want to have to go searching for you hellions on my day off from patrolling. None of them mentioned that they wouldn't be by themselves, that they'd be together, as they bowed to the principal and reassured Aizawa before they headed back to the dorms in silence. May split off to go pack her own items, and the boys ignored their classmates as they took the elevator up to their floor. Are you sure that it's okay that we spend the whole weekend with you? Hitoshi asked, seeming nervous about the venture. The hag has been pestering me about it since she found out that I reconciled with Izuku, Katsuki waved off. Don't worry about being a bother. She'll dote on each and every one of you like she always did with the nerd. The boys finally split off into their own rooms after that and packed a weekend's worth of items as fast as they could before meeting back up in the hallway. Let's go find May, Shoto suggested, as they hiked their bags onto their shoulders and made their way back out of the dorms. I'm sure she's already waiting for us, Hitoshi said as they entered the elevator. Or she got stuck trying to figure out which projects and trinkets she could bring in my house, Katsuki countered. I'm sure that she has some sort of travel project in mind just for something like this, Hitoshi laughed. What took you guys so long? May cried out as the elevator opened. I was about to march up there and drag you down. Definitely had a project prepared for this, Shoto whispered to Hitoshi, making Katsuki snort. Sorry, Goggles, Katsuki said, leading his friends out of the elevator and over to the excited girl. Honestly didn't think you'd be done that fast. Let's get going, May said. I'm excited to see what Mrs. Bakugo is like. Yeah, Katsuki said, leading the way out of the dorms. So, what's Mrs. Midoriya like? Hitoshi asked as they exited the school premises and walked towards the train station. I haven't seen her since we were like 4, but she was always really sweet and spoiled Izuku and I, Katsuki answered with a shrug. What if she's changed since then? Shoto asked, earning harsh whispers from Hitoshi and May. Katsuki sighed. I honestly don't know if she has or not. Izuku's always doting on his mother. You guys hear him too, it's just... Katsuki shook his head. I don't know. It seems as if there's been some dynamic change, so I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't the same as I remember when we go over. It's also been like 12 years since you last saw her, May supplied. They'd finally reached the station, and they all tapped their cards at the ticket gate as they entered the station, following Katsuki as they went. There's bound to be some difference in her personality and demeanor, right? Yeah, people are always changing, Hitoshi agreed. Even if it's simple, unnoticeable changes. They let the topic drop at that, as they waited for their train to arrive. It was only a couple of minutes out, and they went on their phones to pass the time. As soon as their train arrived, they all boarded onto the proper train and found a secluded area to themselves. What are your parents like? Shoto asked, turning to Katsuki. They're loud as shit, Katsuki said, still scrolling on his phone. He was looking to see what articles were being posted about Izuku and the whole traitor situation, which thankfully weren't many. Looks like Nezu was keeping mostly everything regarding the arrest under lock like he'd said. I mean, that's to be expected, Hitoshi said, chuckling. You had to get it from somewhere. What about where we'll be sleeping? May asked, tinkering with one of her projects. Are we all going to be crammed into one room? My room is huge, and plenty of spare bedrooms for you all, Katsuki huffed, finally putting his phone away. Granted, we'll probably all fall asleep in the living room watching TV or some shit. It's not like they haven't done that exact thing in each other's dorms throughout the past couple weeks. Yeah, that checks out, Hitoshi shrugged. The train chimed to notify the passengers that it was about to stop, and Katsuki stood, the others following as he made his way to the train door. As soon as the door slid open, they all stepped out, and Katsuki led them out of the station and through the streets towards his house. When they arrived, Katsuki's friend stopped to stare at the house. It's huge, Hitoshi whispered. I just wasn't aware that you also came for money, Katsuki, Shoto agreed. Imagine the warehouse you could make out of this place, May added with a gleam in her eyes that spoke of danger. All right, Katsuki huffed. Enough ogling. Let's just get inside before the hag comes out to greet us. Oh, May shouted. I can't wait to meet your mom. She ran up to the door ahead of everyone and skidded to a stop and just barely contained herself to knock politely. Katsuki sighed, but didn't try to keep up with her. It's my house, May. You don't need to knock. The door swung open as May turned to retort, and the hag stood in all her glory, a wicked grin on her face and dressed to the nines. Brat! Friends, welcome. Come on in. I have tea all set up for you. Katsuki shook his head at his mother's antics and led his two other friends inside, May dutifully following Mitsuki. Should have known she'd pull this shit, he muttered as they walked into the living room, having taken their shoes off and changing into prepared house slippers. Does she like to throw parties? Shoto asked, looking at the tea and food arrangements set up in the living room. Katsuki shrugged. She throws big parties when they're promoting new lines for the company, so she's pretty used to it. She's probably just excited that I'm finally bringing friends from UA over. You never brought anyone from your other group? Hitoshi asked, sitting on the couch next to May. Nah, Katsuki said, taking his usual seat in the armchair, as Shoto sat on Hitoshi's other side. What should we do before going over to Midoriya's? May asked, playing with the new fidget toy that Kaminari had given to her, after she'd promised not to make it into a bomb. We can just watch a movie or some shit, Katsuki shrugged, grabbing the remote and turning on the TV. The old hag will be back in a minute or so. They sat quietly, munching on the snacks that Mitsuki had provided, as Katsuki scrolled through Netflix to try to find something to watch. So, how is school going for you all? Mitsuki asked, coming back in and sitting on the arm of Katsuki's chair. Katsuki rolled his eyes as his friends perked up. I've been making a ton of support equipment for everyone, May chirped happily. Yeah, she made me some new additions to my costume, Hitoshi agreed. Stuff I wouldn't even have thought about. Oh, Mitsuki exclaimed. So you're in the support course, then? Yep, May agreed. Soon you'll be seeing my name everywhere. Hatsume Industries coming to Japan soon. Mitsuki giggled at the girl's excitement. I'm sure you'll be everywhere. Maybe you can help produce our fabrics for us and you'll be able to support the fashion industry as well. Ma, stop trying to recruit everyone you meet into working for you, Katsuki hissed. Oh, hush, Mitsuki sniped, playfully smacking the side of his head. I'm only trying to help your friend out here. Yeah, sure you are, Katsuki said sarcastically, rolling his eyes. So, what about you boys? Mitsuki asked. I recognize both of you from the sports festival. We're both in Katsuki's class, Hitoshi said. I only joined about a month ago. You were in general before, right? Mitsuki asked. Yeah, I have a mental-based quirk, so the exams were biased against me, Hitoshi muttered. But you're in the right class now, Mitsuki offered. I'm sure Izuku can analyze plenty of ways to use your quirk if he hasn't already. Mitsuki looked around at the group before glaring at Katsuki. Where's the other brat? That's why we came home, Katsuki explained. We need to go talk to Auntie. Can we explain after? Sure, Mitsuki huffed. Just leave your dear old mother in the dark, I guess. Stop being so dramatic, Katsuki said, rolling his eyes. We'll explain everything when we get back, but we don't want to get there when she's going to bed. We do want to be respectful, given that none of us have been to her house, Shoto interjected. I haven't been over there since I was 4, so I think being respectful is only right, Katsuki added. All right, Mitsuki said, waving her hand. You all get on, then. I expect you back at a reasonable time, since I assume you all haven't eaten dinner yet, though. Plus, we have to work out sleeping arrangements. Sounds good, Ma, Katsuki said, standing from the chair and ignoring the weird look Mitsuki was sending him. The others stood as well, and they quickly headed over to the entryway to slip back on their shoes before heading out, everyone once again following Katsuki. They walked in silence, each of them lost in their thoughts about Izuku, meeting his mother, and informing her of her son's situation. In no time at all, they stood on the Midoriya's doorstep, and Katsuki was knocking on the door. Midoriya Inko opened the door, and it was like stepping through a warped time portal for Katsuki. She looked exactly the same, and she had on a welcoming smile, yet something was off. Oh, Cats, baby, what are you doing here? Auntie Inko asked. She caught sight of the others behind him, and her smile seemed to strain. Oh, I recognize Todoroki but not the others. Are you all Izuku's friends? Where is he? Where? Katsuki sighed. That answered the question of whether anyone had contacted Auntie about Izu getting arrested. We're all friends with Izuku, Auntie. That's Todoroki Shoto, as you recognized, Shinzo Itoshi, who recently joined our class but has been friends with the nerd for a good while, and Hatsume Mei, who's in the support course but has been pretty close to all of us since the start of the year, since she's volunteered to do the main projects for our hero costumes. Katsuki introduced each of his friends to his honorary aunt and pointed to each of them in turn. Can we come in? He asked, tilting his head towards the house. We're here precisely to talk about why Izu didn't join us. Inko bobbed her head quickly and stepped aside. Of course. I'll get some tea made up for you all. There's no need for tea, Mrs. Midoriya, Shoto interjected politely. Mrs. Bakugo gave us some when we dropped our stuff off earlier. Oh? Inko asked as she led them all into the apartment and to the living room. Are you all staying with the Bakugos for the weekend, then? Yup, Mei cheered. Katz was kind enough to offer, and his parents were even kinder to allow the offer. Well, it sure sounds like you have an enjoyable weekend ahead of you, Inko said with a smile, before turning to Katsuki. Now, why isn't Izuku with you? I realized today that I haven't heard from him in a while, and tried to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. She only realized today that Izuku hadn't been contacting her? Why would it take so long? Were they not on good terms? Well, to be honest, Mrs. Midoriya, Shoto started, side-eyeing Katsuki since he hadn't spoken yet. Izuku was arrested a while back. He was accused to be the UA traitor, and it's believed that he was conspiring with All for One, Mei added in a soft tone. They took him from our homeroom class not long after I joined the class, Hitoshi finished. Is he alive? Inko asked, taking a sip from her tea. Is he alive? Katsuki asked. What the hell do you mean by that, Auntie? Katsuki, language, Inko snapped. Don't you dare curse in my house. Katsuki raised his eyebrows at the woman before him. We just told you that your only son was arrested on a charge that could make him serve time in prison, and your only question is whether he's alive? Not only that, he continued, holding up a hand when she opened her mouth. But you stated that you only realized today that you haven't heard from Izuku. Monday marks a month of Izuku being arrested and held prisoner. Why would you not realize for a month that Izu wasn't talking to you and then not do anything about it when he doesn't answer, or attempt to contact later? Come now, Katsuki. I know you're still a kid, but even you know how much of a deck you are to your Izuku can be, Inko said, with a sharp look in her eyes. The others winced at her words, but Katsuki only glared at her. He can't do anything right, not even contact his own mother. I'm surprised he hasn't been expelled yet, to be honest. Mrs. Midoriya, Shoto cut in, anger bright in his eyes despite his still stoic, polite disposition. Izuku is one of the top students in the class. He helps all the other students as well. If it weren't for this false accusation, then the school would have no reason to expel him. Inko waved him off. I'm sure his kind disposition can make you all think anything he wants. If the commission has arrested him for conspiring with All for One to get a quirk, then it probably has merit. He did come upon his quirk rather suddenly, you know, especially since, you might not know this, he was diagnosed quirkless. Auntie, we all know much more about Izu's quirk than you do, Katsuki snapped. I don't know when all of this started happening, he continued, gesturing vaguely at Inko. But I've heard enough of you degrading Izuku, when that's what he got from everyone else throughout his life until he got a quirk. We're going back to my house now. Don't expect us back anytime soon, unless Izuku gets out and we're grabbing his stuff. Katsuki stood up from the chair he was sitting on, and the others followed suit. You'll be lucky if little Deku gets out of the commission's clutches. I don't want to ever see you in my house again, Bakugo Katsuki, Inko hissed, standing up. Yeah, whatever, Auntie, Katsuki snapped, rolling his eyes as they all left the apartment, Inko slamming the door behind them. Well, she's a fucking bitch, Hitoshi commented, as they made their way back to Katsuki's house. Was she always like that? Mei asked, playing with her fidget toy again. How is Izuku always so happy if he has to go home to that? No, she wasn't, Katsuki muttered. But I also haven't seen her since I was 4, which gives her plenty of time to change into whatever the fuck that was. Izuku won't have to go back home to that when this is all over, right? Shoto asked. He doesn't deserve that. Nobody does. Hitoshi threw an arm over Shoto's shoulders and gave him a light squeeze. We'll make sure he doesn't. Oh, fuck, Katsuki said as he looked up when they'd reached his house. Oh, Shoto said. Hiya, Eraser, Shinzo said, rubbing the back of his neck. So, we may have forgotten to text you. Aizawa tapped his foot as he stood outside Katsuki's front door with his arms crossed, a red glare aimed at them. Forgot? To be fair, my old hag distracted us, Katsuki shrugged, leading the others forward. Katsuki! Mitsuki shouted, opening the door, which he now realized was never fully closed. I've been texting you the entire time you were gone. Yeah, Katsuki said. My phone's on silent. Mitsuki sighed and shook her head before turning to Aizawa. Now that the brats are back, would you like to come in for some tea? I just came to make sure they got here safely, ma'am, Aizawa said, sinking into his capture scarf. Now that I see them, and they're home, my job is done. Well, Sensei, Shinzo said, cutting off Mitsuki with a wince. We have something we need to show you. Aizawa sighed as he waved his hand for the kids to go in first, then followed them inside. Ma, make the hobo some coffee, will ya? Katsuki asked as they all walked into the living room. He doesn't like tea. Mitsuki rolled her eyes, but left to the kitchen. Hope you like instant coffee, that's all we got, she called out. That's fine, Aizawa said as he sat on an armchair. What'd you have to show me? Hitoshi dug through his pockets and held out his phone, showing the recorder app. Just wait for my ma to get back, Katsuki said as Aizawa took the phone. She needs to hear it too. Mitsuki came in a second later, handing Aizawa the coffee before taking a seat at the other armchair. Katsuki sat on the arm of the couch as his friends took seats on it. How is Inko doing? She's a fucking bitch, Katsuki hissed as he walked into the kitchen, his friends following. Don't talk about your aunt like that, Katsuki, Mitsuki reprimanded. Yeah, well, if you'd gone with us, you'd be just as mad, Katsuki snapped. Since when does she despise her own child? Are we talking about Midoriya Inko? Aizawa asked. Of course we are, Katsuki shouted. We told you we were going to visit her. Aizawa arched an eyebrow at him, which made him roll his eyes. Didn't expect you all to do it tonight, is all. It would be illogical to wait any longer, Shoto stated. Sorry, hold on, Mitsuki said, waving her hand in front of her. Can we backtrack? Why were you guys visiting Inko? What do you mean she despises Izuku? Where even is he? Izuku got arrested about a month ago, Katsuki sighed. What? Mitsuki shrieked. The commission arrested him because everyone is under the impression that he's the UA traitor, Shoto explained calmly. Well, not everyone, Hitoshi interjected. His boyfriend here, Aizawa said, waving towards Katsuki and making his heart stutter as he refused to look at his mother. As well as these kids, and some others are still on his side. Additionally, myself, as well as the principal and a handful of other teachers, know that he isn't the traitor. Aizawa cut in. Katsuki, Mitsuki snapped. Is your teacher right? I don't know what you're talking about, Katsuki muttered, wishing Izuku were here to help tame her like he'd promised. Bakugo Katsuki, you look at me right now, Mitsuki shouted. You're in trouble, Mei Whisper sang. Katsuki smacked her upside the head before finally looking at Mitsuki. Fine, yes, Izuku and I are dating, okay? Mitsuki's eyes shone. Fucking finally! What? Katsuki asked, completely confused. You all have been in love since you were in diapers, Mitsuki huffed. You just got way too big of an ego when you got your quirk. As amusing as this is, Aizawa deadpanned, can we get back to Mrs. Midoriya? Right, Hitoshi said, and Katsuki couldn't be more grateful that the attention was off of him. So Izuku got arrested for supposedly being the UA traitor, and we decided to check with his mom to see if she knew about him getting arrested. And the Inko thinks that Izu's just a Deku that forgot to contact her for a month, and she only just realized today, Katsuki hissed. And she believes that he's the traitor, as long as that's what the commission says, Mei added bitterly. Oh, I'm about to go to war with that bitch. She really said all of that just now, Mitsuki asked. What in the absolute fuck? Aizawa said at the same time. I was recording it, Hitoshi said, gesturing to the phone that Aizawa was still holding. I thought it might be helpful to show whether the commission had told her or not. I wasn't expecting her to go off about Izuku like that. That was smart to record it, Aizawa noted. That'll be helpful when we go against her for custody. You can take my phone or send the recording to yourself, I don't care, Hitoshi said with a shrug. Just email it to me, Aizawa said, handing the phone back as he stood up. I need to go talk to Nezu about all this. I need to get some food in the brats anyways and figure out sleeping arrangements, Mitsuki said, standing as well. See you Monday, Aizawa, Katsuki huffed, taking the chair his mom had been sitting on. Sitting on the arm of the couch for so long it made him sore. Aizawa waved as his friends bid their own farewells before he left the house completely. Katsuki couldn't decide whether he wanted to watch the meeting Aizawa was about to have, or if it was a good thing that he was staying very far away from it. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 13 of The Fall of Icarus. Chapter 14 will be up next. This is a bit of a lengthier chapter, which I really like. I hope you all are still enjoying this one, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.